Thank you for tuning in into Niaga AWANI, and right now at this moment we're going to talk on aerospace industry. We're currently navigating a landscape of significant challenges that is driven by technological, environmental and also economic factors, and some contemporary issues that includes the push for sustainable aviation, which is to reduce carbon emissions, and others is technological advancements that includes for example artificial intelligence, AI, and as well as automation, and the need for resilient supply chains in the face of global disruptions. So to discuss further, we have the right authorities joining me in the studio from Malaysia Industry Government Group for High Technology MAIB, and also Aerospace Malaysia Innovation Centre AMIC, which is the Joint Chairman Emeritus Professor Tan Sri Dr. Zakri Abdul Hamis, and as well as on his right, Dr. Biki Bangu, the Member of Board Directors of MAIB and also AMIC. Good morning. Thank you for joining me in the studio. Perhaps firstly, you could comment on the current industry's growth trend and market segments, not just globally, but also within the region. Perhaps we can start with Tan Sri.
Thank you very much. I think as far as the aerospace and aviation industry is concerned, in particular in Malaysia, we are into very interesting times. As you know, a couple of years ago during COVID-19, we had been suffering just like the rest of the world, but now the industry is coming back. So the level of activity is almost equal to the year 2019. And one of the latest figures about numbers, I was informed in 2023, the aviation industry, the aerospace manufacturing in Malaysia has gone up to the tune of about 18 billion ringgit in 2023. So that's a lot of activities going on. And I think what we have here in this country is the ambience or the conditions which promote that there's industries in this country, about 200 aerospace companies in Malaysia itself, having skilled labor, in particular Malaysians themselves, and also we are supplying to the world who are looking for our expertise and also our products.
That's a positive trajectory for our local aerospace industry.
Right.
But for Dr. Binki, maybe a little bit on where do we stand right now for Malaysia in the global markets right now?
I think when we look at the recovery that we've had, it has been a global recovery, and it's great to see that recovery translating here to Malaysia as well. When we look at the global recovery of airports, of airlines, of OEMs, the manufacturers, the MRO, these are all needed for successful industry growth. The projections, although are looking solid, Malaysia's role here is really in the manufacturing and the MRO side of things. And this is where a concise, clear pathway is really needed. So the Malaysia Aerospace Industry Blueprint, for example, which clearly sets out the strategy of how Malaysia will contribute 55 billion ringgit by 2030. And as Tan Sri just mentioned, we're 18 billion of that today. We're on a good trajectory pathway. And we need to continue this trajectory pathway to be able to capture the global growth. The market globally currently stands at, if we look at 2023 figures, $308 billion US dollars. And just this year, that will grow to $369 billion US dollars. So you can see the compounded growth that we're seeing on an annualized basis. And Malaysia is really well positioned because most of the growth is going to happen in this region, in Southeast Asia. So it's geographically really well positioned to be able to capture that capability. And also the alignment with the government and the public-private partnerships through some of the works, for example, that we do in MAIB, are just some of the building enablers that allows us to happen.
But especially during post-pandemic, we've seen new directions for the industry. But for now, moving towards the technological advancements that we have right now, like mentioned earlier, AI and automation, what could be the new directions, both in terms of technology and consumer behaviors, that drives this industry, Tan Sri?
One, I think, the consumer attitude. I think today in the airline industry, is not only a case of flying from A to B. It's more than that. The customers is more discerning in the sense they would pick out the airline that they would like to travel in. And we in Malaysia have seen that done to our country when we have those two tragedies many years ago, which really brought down our profile. Yeah, but also the type of aircraft that they are flying is also very important, and also the seating arrangement in the plane, all are gearing towards customers' comfort. That is on board, but even before flying, there are also factors that the industry needs to take care of. For instance, how the airport is being planned, being managed. You know, what is the shopping requirement, and also how we get to get immigration clearance and all that. All those factor in. All you need to do is look at our neighbor in Changi, the airport, which is always reinventing itself. You know, at one time there's a lot of orchids. If you go to Changi Airport, it's orchids all the way. Now, one of the biggest attraction is this waterfall.
Yep.
So you can see the imagination of those people. You know, so Malaysia in particular need to back up. You know, and we can do it if we focus and be imaginative and innovative. Yeah.
Although the trajectory is positive, somehow we need to learn from neighboring countries when it comes to advancements and also the technological side. But perhaps, Doctor, could you share what are the challenges that we face right now in aerospace industry, and what are the strategic mitigation strategy to mitigate all these challenges?
One of the key challenges, and I would also say opportunity for the aerospace industry, is addressing the sustainability. When we look at the aerospace industry, it constitutes about 2 to 3% of the greenhouse gas emissions. And this is a significant opportunity for the aerospace industries across all of the ecosystems and partners to start putting a strategy together to address the scope 1, 2, and 3. And we are starting to see this conversation really translating at national levels, and then also at industry level, where there is a good progress towards getting to net zero by 2050. And getting that sustainability across the engine efficiency, across the airframe effectiveness, across the integration of engines and airframes, across all the other things that Tan Sri mentioned on the ecosystems of aerospace and aviation will become really key. So you mentioned some of the technologies that are the enablers. I think investing in those technologies, whether it's materials research, the AI, the data analytics, we then need to be able to apply those into the area and ensure that we can get the productivity improvements, the efficiency gains, so that the overall CO2 footprint comes down. And that really is an opportunity for the way the ecosystem of manufacturers are in Malaysia, how we can take these technologies and make sure that our ecosystems are using that technology, improving their efficiency, so that we then look more competitive in the outside world as well. And sustainability is a huge opportunity for everyone to play a part.
And indeed, sustainability is one of the challenges that we're aiming right now. Now we have, locally, we have NETR, the aim of NETR, the framework of NETR, but other, perhaps to enhance the ecosystem, like Tan Sri mentioned just now, the facilities with it, which is the shopping experience, perhaps how the airport works, and also immigration clearance and tourism trends. But recently we have issues, not to say issues, but it's something that relates with turbulences that affects airplanes or aircraft. So for our local airplanes itself, aircrafts, how do we prepare for this kind of issues? And I mean, in a way, it will affect the whole brand itself, the company. So how do we mitigate and prepare for these kind of issues?
Maybe the Rolls-Royce man can respond to that. Yeah.
Perhaps Doctor can say a thing.
So this really pegs to the conversation we were just having, that the world around us is changing. The the sustainability is a huge opportunity. We are seeing turbulence as a weather pattern that is changing around us. And using the technologies to be able to predict those weather patterns, using the technologies to make sure that we mitigate or at least reduce as much of the emissions as we possibly can, not just in aerospace but in the other industries as well, are all enablers for that. I think the key here for us is to ensure we are investing in the technologies, we're using the technologies and equipping the whole ecosystem with the technologies for the aerospace industries. The turbulence is an external environment effect. We need to be able to monitor that. We need to learn across geographical boundaries. We need to partner with others out of Malaysia to understand the weather patterns that we have at the moment. And advancing technologies that can be applied will help a lot with that.
But indeed, sustainability can help us to remain competitive in this, in the markets.
I have a view on this.
Sure,
I want to
please.
go back to this sustainability issue. And in particular, Dr. Vicky mentioned also how the airline industry contribute a lot on this carbon emissions. And one of the things that we are doing locally, regionally, and globally is to produce sustainable aviation fuel. And you know, for a country like Malaysia, which is highly biodiverse, in other words, there's a lot of species still which we can utilize to produce sustainable aviation fuel. One of that is microalgae, and there's already work being done also in our country, in the universities, research institute. So that's one potential, you know, of extracting value from our rich natural resources. But for now, it's still very preliminary. Cost of producing SAF is still very expensive. But I think one day, with research money put into it, I think we can do that, and Malaysia can be one of the leaders in this.
I mean, roughly the target, when will be can be applied?
Or maybe 2050. But you know, one of the things that we need to invest is on research and development, R&D, because that would produce the kind of innovation of products, technologically sound and progressive. R&D, we are not doing that well. Advanced countries like Germany, Japan, South Korea will spend about at least 3% of their GDP on research and development. Ours today, we spend less than 1%, you know, and that's not good because
That's a huge gap.
it's a huge gap. So the government is trying their best. In fact, in the 12 Malaysia plan and all that, there are statements trying to promote, to invest more on R&D. But it has not been translated into real figures for now. So that's one aspect in the discussion here about technology, investment or in R&D is important.
So that translation of R&D investment, and to Tansri's point, the sustainability and sustainable aviation fuel is a great opportunity for Malaysia. Having SAFs available at the right economics and at the right scale will allow 85% of the CO2 emissions reductions. This is a huge savings that can actually progress the industry towards the net zero target by 2050. But we do need the regulatory support, we do need the government incentives, we do need the public-private partnerships to make the development of SAF from research through to translations into sort of the SAF that can actually be used by the airlines and airports with the right incentives in place. And I think that will be the key for the aerospace industries.
And another thing to remain competitive for our local aerospace industry is how do we balance the trade-offs between cost efficiency and sustainability in their efforts to innovate the whole industry. Perhaps what are the best strategies? The doctor or Tan Sri can take this question.
I think where we need to start is look at the strengths that we have within our education and ecosystem on what are the aerospace education at university level, at polytechnics level, at the secondary school level, not just aerospace, but engineering and science capabilities that we need to sort of uplift. And the key here is not just taking technologies and applying it, but also upskilling individuals to be able to offer more to the industry. Today, if we look at what the aerospace manufacturing industry has secured over 5.7 billion ringgit in 2024 to date, the MRO industry has secured 600 million ringgit to date. And this is great, but then this is because Malaysia is demonstrating that we've got capabilities, we've got people, and the attractiveness of the foreign direct investment and the partnerships with other countries is becoming key. So if we can do more of this, it'll be able to allow us to sort of develop even further. But the education system and bringing the education system into this conversation is absolutely critical for this to happen.
But speaking of which, what's happening right now is, for example, the geopolitical tensions that's happening in the Middle East somehow will affect the global supply chains and partnerships within the aerospace industry. Perhaps a thing or two from Tan Sri, how we can manage this issue?
I think we should always have this attitude of being one of the global players. In a sense, the geopolitics and all that got to be taken into consideration, but making sure that we are friends to everyone. That means people would like to come and invest in our country, and our country also must be prepared to develop the infrastructure and also the manpower. I like to come in on this issue about the manpower and a reference to TVET, as you know, which is being discussed very much by us in the country today. I want to say that having rich natural resources is not enough. To me, the most effective natural resource is the human resource. So, and you know, there was one quote from Sir Winston Churchill, the wartime Prime Minister of Great Britain. He said the empire of the future is the empire of the mind. The future has to be controlled by knowledge. Yeah? And we know how true that is. You look at Japan, Korea, and also Germany. Out of the ashes of the Second World War, they rebuild.
Yeah.
And this is the strength. So having skilled Malaysian needs to be one of the priorities. But I must also tell you, in the aerospace industry, many of the skilled or semi-skilled workers are Malaysians. And you, in other sectors, I think that is not the case. So this is one that we need to build on, carry on, you know, and improve on our human skill. Yeah.
But the question is, do we have sufficient talent pool for the industry?
Maybe you can answer that, but I think it's somewhere in between. Somewhere in between, yeah, somewhere in between.
Perhaps Dr. Biki can add.
The talent is globally competitive. There is no country or a company will say that they're totally happy with the talent that they have. They're always looking to bridge and grow the talent within. I think the point here is more about, yes, we may have the talent at scale, but how do we get them future ready as well? We know the industry is going to evolve. We know that you mentioned the supply chain, the readiness of the supply chain, the attractiveness, the resilience of the supply chain will evolve as well. And in the case of aerospace, we need to make sure that we're not just scaling, but we're scaling with inclusion of technology. And what I mean by that is we need to progressively scale with the right automation, with the right robotics, with the right man and machine working together, so that the overall efficiency of the facility is much more higher and much more attractive. And that's how you start building more resilience into the ecosystem of supply chain, which today, across many industries, is challenged. So we need to start looking at what are the capabilities that sit outside of Malaysia. How do we bring that and partner with Malaysia to bring it in? And then at the same time, how do we grow our talent pipeline to be able to be future ready as well?
Speaking of future readiness and also future proof and resilience, part of the challenges is about cyber threats or cybersecurity in the aerospace sector. So what measures should be implemented or should be measured right now in the industry so we are future-proof on the potential threats?
I think this is more where a conversation comes between the government, the regulators and the industries as well, on making sure that we provide a platform for the industries to be able to safely operate. And really safely operate not just within the geographical boundary, but outside of the geographical boundary as well. So this way the partnerships become really important, the bilaterals with other countries become really important, the trade connectivity with other countries become really important. And so does the inclusion of the regulatory framework of cybersecurity that is applicable in country and out of country become really important. So this is much more of having the conversation at a national agenda level, but then also getting the regulators involved to make sure that it's at a global level as well.
And speaking of sustainability, back to the topic of sustainability, what are the environmental, sustainable and governance considerations that aerospace companies must prioritize to align with the global ESG agenda? What are those steps?
Well, there are many things that are being done. If we look at the investment that the industry is making in technology, the technology where the material science and the research is being pushed to the boundaries. We're putting investments in the fusion between hardware and software and data that can improve the safety metrics of the overall ecosystem. We're looking at how the efficiency of the engine becomes much more better and better as time progresses as well. If I look, for example, at as an OE provider, the Trent XWB that powers the Airbus A350, it is the most efficient engine in the world today. And it took us time to get there. And it is 15% more efficient than the first generation of engines, than the first generation of engines. And we've already developed the next generation of engine called the UltraFan, which will be additional 10% more efficient. So you can see the progress that we're making by really pushing the technology boundaries as far to the limit as possible. And then it's about implementing within the ecosystem as well. Because it's not just the engine providers, the airframers, the airports, the network of, as Tansri mentioned, the ecosystem of the user experience all need to be equally efficient as well. And that's the opportunity here.
Amazing. But questions for Tansri, we have this one increasing emphasis on space exploration and commercialization that we have on traditional aerospace markets and resource allocation. Perhaps what can you say about that?
Well, that is one area we shouldn't isolate ourselves in. Research and potential of space industry. As you know, this is what we call one of the global commons. And as a sovereign nation, Malaysia needs to take advantage of that. So that means if we don't have the level of capability for now, it's incumbent for us to collaborate with our friends out there, in particular those technologically advanced countries with the funding and all, but we'll develop such kind of synergy so that we would be prepared. This is also like talking about the surface of the moon or even Antarctica, global commons, which is beyond the national jurisdiction of any one country, let alone a small country like Malaysia. But as a member of the communities of nations, we should be in it. Our citizens should eventually be part of the solution to those opportunities ahead. Yeah.
I think I agree with that. Whilst there might be a focus of satellites, for example, at a vertical level, which requires investments from government, it requires public-private partnerships, a huge amount of capability that is developed also needs to translate as a horizontal. And that's where a setup like MAIB actually comes into place, because we work closely with MNCs, but we also work closely with SMEs. A big part of the opportunity is that we need to make sure that everyone progresses. And the technologies that we develop, or the solutions that we develop that might be applicable in a vertical, we need to be able to recognize that, translate that into a horizontal, so that they can be applied into other industries as well. And that is the key here, whether it's automation, whether it's semiconductors, whether it's pharmaceutical. Yeah. There's a lot of value add that can be unlocked from one specific vertical. And that's the role that MAIB takes very heartedly in this area.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing that we have this discussion. It gives me a new perspective of the aerospace industry, and sadly we don't have much time. Perhaps we can end this discussion with a little bit of outlook of this aerospace industry in Malaysia, and a little aspirations from Tan Sri and also Doctor.
Well, for me, being around for many years now, that has seen the country's progress from agricultural nation to what we are today, I am very optimistic that the future is for us over there. But I also think that one element which is necessary here is the political will, and that comes with the wisdom of our leaders, to stay focused, and also to see how we can improve our socio-economic situation. And for that, there should be a dialogue between the political leaders or the policymakers and the experts, the scientists. And beyond that, as Dr. Biki also mentioned, an organization like MAIB, we foster this interaction between the public sector and the private sector, public-private partnership. For our country, that is the way forward. We have the elements. All we need to do now is to walk the talk. Thank you.
It has been very encouraging to see Malaysia's progress in the aerospace industry. It has definitely created a space and anchored itself in supply chain, in manufacturing, and in MRO. Both of these sectors within the aerospace industries will evolve. We need to continue to invest in technologies and capabilities. We need to continue to upskill our talent workforce to be future ready as these opportunities evolve here in Malaysia as well.
There was the Joint Chairman Emeritus Professor Tan Sri Dr. Zakri Abdul Hamis and Dr. Biki Bangu, the Member of Board of Directors of MAIB and also AMIC. Thank you so much for joining me in the studio this morning on Niaga AWANI, and perhaps we can have another discussion sometime, another time and in a different time. And I wish you all the best for MAIB and AMIC and also the aerospace industry as a whole. Again, thank you, and you can find the whole discussion on all of our social media platforms of Astro AWANI.